What a year 2024 has been for the sports card market. Some cards are up, others are down. Overall, things have stabilized for the most part, which is a really good thing for the health of the hobby. I'm looking forward to breaking down which ones have gone up and down the most this past year. Let's data dive. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Data Dive powered by Market Movers. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as Teapot, and it's time to look back on the last year. It's almost 2025, I can't believe it. This year, I say it every year, but this year truly, I think went by the fastest of any year so far in my life, and it's been a crazy year for the sports card market. Overall, things are going really, really well in the sports card market. People are as interested as they've ever been. There's tons of new people coming in, and finally, after about 2.5, 3 years of most things just coming down from the insane highs that we saw during COVID, well, now things are starting to stabilize a little bit more. So that's what I want to break down. We're going to go through the market as a whole. We're going to look sport by sport at which players have gone up and down the most. And then I'll spotlight a few players who just stand out to me from this past year. So let's get right into it. And as always, if you want to use Market Movers, if you want access to data like this, whether it's on your computer or on your mobile phone, you can go to marketmoversapp.com, and if you use promo code DIVE, you'll get 2 weeks completely free to try it out, and then 20% off for life off any one of our different subscription plans. So make sure to go check that out if you're interested. I'm starting out here with what we call our Market Pulse. These are different indexes that we build so that you can track kind of the market at a bigger level, at a little bit more of a macro level. And I'm looking at our SCI 500 from 2024. We're going to be recalibrating this again for 2025. We like to track these year over year, add some cards in, pull some out that are a little less relevant that maybe have fallen off. And so we'll be tracking these again going into next year. And we use this every week in our top 5 cards going up on the Sports Card Investor channel to help show you and give you a glimpse of what's going on at a high level. So you can see ebbs and flows. If you were to go back year over year, in most cases, in a normal, quote unquote, healthy situation, there's this unmistakable seasonality. Every year we see it. So what happens is sports card market starts to heat up in about late January all the way through March and into early April, and then we see this dip down. I would like to say I think it coincides probably with baseball starting, and then people are like, okay, now the long season's here. You've got basketball playoffs that happen. You've got NHL playoffs. It's really interesting. This is also right before the Super Bowl, so you have certain movement around which players are hot in the NFL playoffs. Things kind of chill out a little bit in the summer, then we see this bump up. Now, a lot of times what's interesting is we will see a little bit of peak a little bit earlier typically than this in July. But as the football season starts to warm up the following year, people are starting to put all their money into who they want to prospect on before the season starts. So we see this run up, and this was the high point this year. From where we started a year ago, this was the high point where we see on October 3rd that we peaked out, and the SCI 500 was up 6% from where it had been, I guess a little under a year prior, because I'm looking at a little bit less than the last year here to kind of wrap things up. All right, so the next thing I want to look at is I'm going to go sport by sport through our price movements feature. So we have 4.5 million cards that we track in Market Movers, and you can look at all of those cards, every one of them that's moved in the last year on our price movements feature right here, and I'm going to show you how I set those filters. So if I come over here, I clicked on movements, what I did is, this is kind of like getting carte blanche access to all of our data that we track pricing on for all of these cards, and you can use it however you want to slice and dice, to filter by different things to see what you want to see. So I put in baseball as the category. I put in all these different years going back to 2009. You can pick whatever ranges you want. I don't use the rookie card only because I want like Bowman firsts and other things to get pulled in, so I just look at all the cards that are coming in for baseball. Average sale, minimum average sale for the player that I'm looking at, $25, a minimum of 365 sales in the last year, 1 sale per day on average for that player. And then I do graded only. This just sort of helps tighten everything up, outliers and other things that might happen. This is going to be like the most, let's call it like the most reliable data set when you get into that bracket of fluctuations that can happen on lower dollar stuff because of shipping and other things. So this is baseball, and what I'm looking at is the player. By default, it'll have you on cards. I'm looking at players, and the player that went up the most Raise your hand in the comments if you would have guessed Mark Vientos. Mark Vientos of the New York Mets. He had a great playoffs. He had a nice season. He broke out. One thing to keep in mind is I'm looking at the last 365 days. Baseball's in the offseason now, right now. So you can kind of go through this, any way that you wanted to. But this is going to show you at a point in time which cards have gone up and down the most. So there's going to be some seasonality in this. We've got Vientos at up 84% from a year ago on average on his cards. Jarren Duran obviously had a fantastic season. He was All-Star Game MVP. He's up 55%. Bobby Witt Jr. was right in the mix, right in the conversation for MVP this year, 52.7%. Stephen Kwan, the guy who absolutely tortured my Tigers when the Guardians knocked them out of the playoffs, 52%. Lindor, 39%. Freddie Freeman, obviously the World Series MVP hero, 27.9%. Judge, in spite of, unfortunately, a lackluster subpar playoffs, had a historic season. He's just obviously one of the best hitters on planet Earth. Had an unfortunate cold stretch at the end of the season, but he's still up 27%. He's a guy that last year I said I wasn't buying. His cards are obviously very expensive for his best cards. I was just nervous. I get nervous when somebody has big seasons, and he obviously had the big season 2 years ago, and then I worry about a cool down. Is it a fluke, or can they repeat it year over year over year? Well, he repeated it and then some this year, and he won unanimous MVP. Jose Ramirez up 21%. A lot of people consider him to be arguably the most undervalued player in all of Major League, in all of MLB. Because he's on the Guardians, he just doesn't tend to get the love, but that's a guy who's in the top 5 MVP conversation seemingly every year. Fantastic player on a Hall of Fame trajectory. Paul Skeens up 19%. He's cooled off a little bit now. Not a ton, but I think down like 5, 6, 7% on, overall on some of his stuff over the last 90 days. He's a guy that I probably am going to be looking to buy some cards of before the season starts next year, mostly because I think there's just a ton of hype around him. I think there will be more buzz next year, and knock on wood, barring anything fluky, he shouldn't get injured in the offseason. Injury is the big thing that I worry about with pitchers and even hyped pitchers, but I think there's going to be a lot of hype around Paul Skeens continuing to roll into next year, and he'll probably open as the odds-on favorite for the NL Cy Young Award next year. Roman Anthony, you got Juan Soto, who's still up 14% with his big recent contract, crazy contract. Gunnar Henderson, 12%. Jackson Merrill had a fantastic season, up 12%. Was runner-up in that NL Rookie of the Year to Paul Skeens. Ohtani, this is the one that's surprising to me a little bit, but his prices were high last year. He's up 7.5%. We're going to look at some of his cards later because he had a peak that was higher than this, and he's cooled off a little bit. He's another guy. I kept saying, I'm not going to buy Ohtani with the elbow injury, another Tommy John, what's going to go on, and then he came out. And I didn't think he was going to win the MVP this year. I'm sorry, Shohei. I knew you were great. I predicted that he would finish 3rd in the NL MVP. He ran away with it this year and had a record-breaking season, obviously. Kyle Tucker, freshly traded to the Chicago Cubs, up 5.8%. Let's flip the script and let's see who's gone down the most. Yeah, so this is where things get really interesting. You're looking at players that have come down a ton. And where players have come down a ton, there's always an opportunity, potentially, for them to rise back up. When a player has come down a ton, that can mean one of two things. It can mean they were just really, really high and that they've come back down to earth. Or it can mean that they just had a poor year and they've dipped because of it. Maybe they can rebound if they come back and play better or they have a big breakout season. So right at the bottom of the list, you've got Wyatt Langford. This is where Jeff would be like, I don't know, seal clapping or gator chomping or doing something along those lines, reminding us how much he loves the University of Florida and Wyatt Langford because he went there. He's down 48%. Might be a sneaky buy. His cards were very high this time last year, coming off of a decent playoff run, winning the World Series with the Texas Rangers. So he was hot, and I think that has a lot to do with why he's come down so significantly. Corbin Carroll is a guy I'm very interested in. And in fact, I picked up 3 of his Bowman Chrome First Refractor PSA 10s. They were just very cheap. They had come down a lot. If you look at his stats post-All-Star game, he had a fantastic post-All-Star game season. It looked like he was turning things around. I hope he can carry that forward. He's a really exciting player to watch. And he was in that MVP conversation a year ago in the NL, and obviously the Diamondbacks made it So again, like with Langford, he was in the World Series this time, this time last year. He had come down a lot since then. Ethan Salas, young. There's people speculating that Ethan Salas might not be as young as what he's told people. I don't know. Who knows if that's true. There's obviously the stuff with Pujols going way back when that might have been the case, that he was a little older than what he let on. But Pujols still had a fantastic career. Ethan Salas looks like he might be the real deal. But his stuff, again, was really hot. Same with Max Clark. I'm excited about him as a Tigers fan, but his stuff was really hot. Evan Carter was in the playoffs last year and didn't have the season that anybody was hoping for this year. Jackson Holliday, do you still believe in Jackson Holliday? That's what I want to know. I ask anybody who's a baseball fan, do you still believe in Jackson Holliday? Because things honestly could not have gone better for him in the minor leagues and worse for him in the major leagues this year. I can't remember the last time we saw this stark of a difference with a player who was so highly touted. Fantastic, just took the lid off the ball, couldn't be stopped in the minors, gets called up, terrible, goes back down to the minors, okay, he's pretty good, back up to the majors, can't hit the ball. I got to imagine he's going to figure things out. He's got pedigree. Obviously, his dad was a fantastic player. He's got brothers. He's got great coaches around him. He should be a part of an exciting future still for a young Orioles team. We'll see what happens. His name was being thrown around in trade rumors at the trade deadline this year, almost seeming like the Orioles had given up on him already. So we'll see. Junior Caminero, just kind of scrolling through the rest of this list. Bo Bichette, not sure what to make of Bo Bichette the rest of the way. I'm not particularly high on him. J-Rod did not have as bad of a season as it feels like he had. It wasn't atrocious, but it definitely wasn't good, and it definitely wasn't J-Rod caliber. I think all of us were hoping, myself included, for that post-All-Star game turnaround like we saw with Corbin Carroll, like he did in the year prior in 2023, and it just never came. I had bought a few of his Bowman Chrome Prospect cards here. Those dropped down in value by half from what I paid for them, even after they had come down by half. Those cards just absolutely plummeted, and his cards are down significantly. Really surprising to me, honestly, to see Michael Harris down 28% over the last year. He had a solid year. A lot of people are really high on him. There might be a buying opportunity there. Again, I'm never going to tell you what to do. You do your own research. Use Market Movers as a tool. Use your own knowledge of the sports and the players and what to expect from them, and you make your own predictions. But Michael Harris is an interesting one to me. I got to think the Braves are going to be back in the mix next year. They just have too much talent on the team. They need to stay healthy and get things turned around. So that's kind of baseball. Jackson Chourio had a fantastic year. He's another guy that I think both he and Jackson Merrill look like great buying opportunities over the next year. I think they're going to continue to play really well. And then I have to mention Ronald Acuna Jr. What are we going to see from Ronald Acuna Jr. when he comes back? Obviously, the injuries have just been a devastating part of his career. It's like watching what's happened with Mike Trout, but much earlier in someone's career. He's a guy that baseball needs to be healthy. Obviously had the record-breaking season in the MVP 2 years ago. Please stay healthy, Ronald Acuna Jr., and come back and help the Braves get things turned around. All right, let's jump over and let's look at basketball. Right at the top of the list, Paige Beckers, and you scroll down just a little bit, you got Sabrina Ionescu. Women's basketball is taking off. What I've done, I've compared women's basketball and the WNBA in particular, but you got to lump college basketball in with it, which has gotten incredibly, incredibly popular, even more popular than men's college basketball last year with Caitlin Clark. I compare this to the early 1980s in the NBA, when the NBA was actually kind of struggling in the 70s. They were nearly bankrupt. They couldn't make things work. And then they got some guys to start this superstar-fueled league named Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. You had Dr. J, you had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then you got that guy named Michael Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon and Karl Malone and they started building up this legacy of these most hyped superstar players and then this all-star cast, and they built around it. But you've got to have that one person at the top or two people that you can point to and get people really excited about, and that's what Caitlin Clark brought. She plays unlike anybody that I've ever seen in the WNBA in terms of just how she shoots, how she passes. There's a reason why she's become so popular. And Paige Beckers is another one that I know Jeff has been very high on. She's very exciting, very, very celebrated collegiate player and figures to be a top draft pick in the WNBA when she makes that leap. So a lot of hype around women's WNBA cards. Really surprised to see Paolo Banchero up still 26.4% from a year ago. He's injured, and the Magic are playing well, but he's injured. I know there was a lot of buzz around him at the National this year and kind of like in May through August of this last year. Then things kind of stabilized. I think people are just holding his cards. They're not liquidating. They're not selling. They're waiting. They paid up. They think this guy's got a lot of potential, and he probably does. So they're waiting to see what he can do when he comes back from injury. Kyrie Irving up 23.5%. Obviously, he was a big reason why the Mavs went to the finals last year. Jaylen Brown won finals MVP, up 23%. Anthony Edwards, he had that crazy chart, and he went just completely nuclear, like 3x'd all of his cards, 4x'd his cards during that playoff run last year before getting eliminated. He was up big time. Jalen Brunson, I would expect to see his cards start to or continue to cool down. The Knicks now have a distributed offense. They've got Towns. They've got Mikal Bridges. They've got a lot of people who can shoot the basketball. His stats are down this year. He's still Jalen Brunson. He's still the same player, but he's not as ball dominant as he was before, and his offense is down a little bit. And even being down 2, 3, 5 points per game can make a big difference in terms of how the card market, the fickle card market, views you. Talked about Sabrina Ionescu, who won the WNBA championship this year. She's up 20%. Grady Dick is the ultimate trap card, in my opinion. Everybody was like, oh, he's going to get minutes. He's on the Raptors. They're not good. In fact, they're really, really, really bad. And he's not playing well. And no offense, Grady Dick, if you're out there, no offense. I always say that. But his shooting percentage is abysmal. His scoring is up like double what it was last year because of minutes and shot volume, because they don't have anybody really taking shots for them, maybe outside of RJ Barrett. But he's not playing particularly well. I'd be really careful. I'd be really careful with Grady Dick cards. That's just my opinion. I don't own any. Jalen Green up 14%. Shea up 13%. The Thunder playing really well. Jalen Williams, there he is, the teammates back-to-back. It was really interesting to see the Bucks turn things around and run through that in-season NBA Cup tournament and then, frankly, absolutely dominate the Thunder. The Thunder were favorites going to that game by like 4 points, and the Bucks made a statement. They're turning things around, but I still like the Thunder in the West to make a big push toward the NBA Finals, or at least the Western Conference Finals, in the very least, I would say. You got a couple of Cavs here in Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell and Caitlin Clark. Let's shift and go look at the players that have gone down the most. For the life of me, I can't ever remember how to say this guy's names. It's not Podziemski it's like Poshemski or Podchemski or something along those lines. This is a guy a lot of people were excited about. They saw Klay Thompson was leaving and they said, well, he's the next guy up. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. Hard to replace Klay Thompson, the true Klay Thompson. He's getting minutes. I think there was a little bit of a Jordan Poole factor going on here where people were like, oh, look at this guy. He could shoot, he could score, he could, put up numbers. He hasn't done it this year. Defensively, I think there's been a lot of concerns. He's been arguing with his teammates. We'll see what his future holds with the Warriors, but that's obviously a franchise that doesn't mess around with players who can't hold their own and help that organization compete. So we'll see what happens with his cards. This is the one that, frankly, shocks, surprises, and honestly kind of disgusts me. Victor Wembanyama down 54.5%. Historically, I've always been the one warning people about the most hyped players when their prices are high. What I found also, though, is that historically, many times those players, if they hold the spotlight as the player who's the next up, their prices will hold true in many cases. We saw like Luka Doncic for a long time hold very steady. Ignore the COVID hype and that weird, peak that happened with everybody. But in general, Luka Doncic, for example, kind of the face of the NBA for the young talent, held very strong on a lot of his card prices. I thought Wemby would hold, and then I thought we'd see him take a big, maybe not a big leap, but a leap again this year. He's incredibly young. He really impressed me in his rookie year. He really impressed me with his progression throughout the year. His defense is second to none in the NBA. Sorry, Rudy Gobert fans, but it's Wemby. He's going to win Defensive Player of the Year, and he's just a force. He's improved his shooting. He started out this season really slowly, But then ultimately, he came back, and he's been playing really, really, really well. At least as of recording this video, I looked recently at his last 9 games. He was averaging like 31 points per game, I think 10 or 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 4.5 combined blocks and steals, not turning the ball over a ton, scoring efficiently. Like, what more can you want from a guy? Has the hobby already given up on Victor Wembanyama? I know people will say, oh, he's got way too many cards. Well, not really. Not really relative to like Paolo Banchero, not really relative to some of these other guys that have their cards going crazy. It's an interesting thing. If you still believe in Wemby, his cards have come down significantly. I would argue now might be a good time to buy some of his cards. I bought a little bit of stuff before the season started. It's come down like 25% even in the last 2 months. So I'm just a hold. I'm a hold on Wemby right now. If he can stay healthy, I think he's got an incredibly bright future. Bronny James, who could have seen that coming? Everybody, anybody with eyes to see. You knew it wasn't going to last. It was all hype. He got his time to play quickly with his dad, and now he's probably never going to be in the NBA again. Jaime Jaquez Jr., Scoot Henderson. Scoot Henderson, I really thought you were going to be good, Scoot Henderson. Brandon Miller, really thought you were going to be good, Brandon Miller. He may still be, but he's not particularly lighting the world on fire this year. De'Aaron Fox is down in spite of just being consistently De'Aaron Fox, a really, really, really good guard, just not quite good enough to get into the spotlight for most people. I've never seen anything ever in my life of watching the NBA, and I've watched a lot of NBA, and I know the NBA really well. I have never seen anything as drastic as Tyrese Halliburton's fall off from last year to the second half of the season to this year. I don't get it. It's bizarre. Somebody's got to explain it to me. He went from being in the conversation with people saying they would rather have him over Jalen Brunson or even in some cases over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. People were saying that last year. I'm not saying I was. I'd take Shai. But people were saying they'd like Halliburton because his shooting efficiency was off the charts. He was shooting like 54% as a guard and like 50% from 3. And he's dropping 11, 12, 14 assists a game with like 2 turnovers, like Chris Paul video game numbers. And now all of a sudden, he doesn't look like the same Tyrese Halliburton. I don't get it. Somebody's got to explain it to me. Let me know if you have some insight into that. You got Kobe White, who's down. He's a guy I thought would emerge. He's this year's Jordan Poole for me. I thought just because of the situation with the Bulls that he would rise up and continue what he was building off of last year. Well, not really. He hasn't been particularly good. Chet's injured. He's down 21%. Zion's market is done. He's done forever. He's done. Sell all your Zion cards. He's done. I don't ever see things turning around for him. Embiid has decided he's unable to play most of the time now, so really unfortunate with his stuff. And Şengün, in spite of the Rockets, he and the Rockets playing incredibly well, down 18%. Let's jump over to football. Travis Hunter just won the Heisman Award recently. He's up 94%. Be careful on those cards. They could still have a lot of life between now and the NFL draft. Probably will, in fact. But be careful with those collegiate cards in general once NFL cards start to come out. That's all I'll say. So you still got some time left for that. Saquon having a Christian McCaffrey caliber year this year. Probably not going to catch the Dickerson record, but he's having a fantastic season, and he's got his name in the MVP conversation. Probably will finish like 3rd or 4th or 5th, but he's in the conversation. Sam Darnold having a real renaissance in spite of what everybody thought. J.J. McCarthy was, I think, supposed to be the starter or projected to be a starter at some point this season. Well, now they're talking about a Darnold contract extension. Maybe that'll happen by the time this video is done. Who knows? But he's having a fantastic season, much to my chagrin as a Lions fan. Interesting to see Randy Moss moving up 60%. I hate to say it, but that probably has to do with his recent announcement that he's been battling cancer. So maybe there's some people that are feeling nostalgic around Randy and trying to pick up some of his cards. Najee Harris, Jared Goff up 48%. Baker's having a fantastic year again, competing at least with the Bucs and all of his receivers being hurt most of the year. And let's keep scrolling down. We got TJ Watt, Devontae Adams, finally figuring things out again with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. He's had a really good 4 or 5 games in a row. Let's switch it. Let's switch here, and let's look at the football players that have gone down the most. And I've done full videos on this in the past, so I'm not going to belabor the point. But you can literally go through this list and say this is all the players that I told you to be careful with in terms of quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson down 59%. Will Levis down 59%. Stroud is the one that shocks me. I did not say I thought Stroud would go up. I thought Stroud would have a really good season. I thought they would run away with their division. Thought they'd have a fantastic season and possibly even make it to the AFC Conference Championship. Not looking like that right now. That team is not particularly impressive so far, in spite of being in first in that division. Puka Nacua is having a really good year. He's down 47%. Bryce Young's having a nice little comeback since getting started again. He's down 43%. Kenny Pickett's nowhere to be found. Justin Fields down 36%. People are finally souring on Brock Purdy. This has not been a good year for the 49ers or for 49er fans. In spite of that, there are rumors that the Niners are going to lock him up, that they're going to keep him, that they're going to lock him up into a long-term deal. So maybe be a hold on your Purdy cards because that's a well-coached team. They're going to turn things around, year over year. I expect them to be back. It's been really weird, the Deebo Samuel thing. I don't understand. That guy's so talented. I don't understand what the situation is there, especially with the other injuries. They don't have Ayuk. We'll see what happens with Deebo. I'd love Deebo Samuel on the Lions. Deebo, if you need a change of scenery, you come to the Lions. We'll make sure that we use you as a Swiss Army knife in many ways. T-Law, told you so. Sorry, down 31%. So a lot of football players down already right now. Because of this time of year, this is not unexpected. We tend to see players come down. With that being said, this is snapping a chalk line to this same exact point last year. So in some ways, it's kind of comparing apples to apples. It was mid-season last year, late season last year, same thing here. But a lot of football players have been coming down. So what does that tell me? It just tells me football cards, difficult. Really difficult, dangerous, hard to predict, a lot of injuries, a lot of money goes into quarterbacks, a lot of money. And it's hot potato revolving door when it comes to this quarterback market. So you got to just be careful in general so you don't get burned. I think football is kind of difficult to predict, if I'm being totally honest. So if you like to collect it, awesome. I have a ton of football cards. Speculating on it, it's not the first sport that I go to for speculation because I think there's just too much injury risk in general. All right, quickly, let's look at hockey. Not my forte or area of expertise by any stretch, but I do know that Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov is having a fantastic season. Last I checked, he was leading the NHL in points. Ovechkin still trying to chase down that all-time goals scored record. He's up 20% in the last year. McKinnon, fantastic player, always in the points leader conversation in the NHL, up 17%. And then let's switch over here and look at the bottom of the barrel. Connor Bedard. Connor Bedard down 78%. Some of you beat me up in the comments over this when I said a few weeks ago that I just don't feel like the Blackhawks have enough right now to turn things around. They're arguably the worst team in hockey. Really bad. He's not particularly lighting the world on fire. He's got a lot of pressure on him. Maybe he ends up having a fantastic NHL career, probably, hopefully. But right now, I would definitely not be a buy in spite of even how much things have come down because his cards are still very expensive. His Young Gun cards are still very expensive. So we've got Jack Hughes, Stützle. We've got Moritz Seider, who just looked like he was going to be the future of the Red Wings, and now doesn't. Cole Caulfield, a solid player. Maybe he's having a down year this year. I haven't looked, to be totally honest, but I know he's been solid. He's down 23%. Lots of Red Wings, disappointing. It's been really frustrating. I still think they can turn things around at some point, but it hasn't happened again this year. They're just kind of middling again, looking like the 2010s Pistons. All right, let's look at soccer. Only 3 names up in the last year of these notable sales: Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, and Robert Lewandowski. And they're all marginally up, barely up on a lot of their cards. Other players down. Vini's down 12%. Lamine Yamal's down 17% just because a lot of his cards just came out. They came out hot. Now they're settling down. He's still the guy in soccer right now that I'm the highest on over the next few years and going into the World Cup. Spain's going to be a World Cup favorite, if not the favorite. Kylian Mbappe's down 17%. Jude's down 30%. He was incredibly hot for a little while. Erling Haaland's down 30%. And you see a few other names on the list. Okay, UFC. Just a quick check here. Very unsurprising to see Alex Pereira up 74%. He just keeps winning and winning and winning and knocking guys out very fast, and he looks completely terrifying, and he's in the conversation for best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Tom Aspinall and John Jones. Make it happen, Dana. Make the fight happen. It's got to happen. You can't have co-belt holders. You got to have this fight happen. And when it does, sorry, I think Aspinall runs away with it. Average finish time of like 38 seconds on his last 4 fights. I think Jones is just a little bit too old to keep up with Aspinall at this point. But who knows? Jones is the GOAT, so maybe he'll surprise me and he'll take him down. Paddy the Baddy looked very impressive in his last fight. He was a guy I was warning to pump the brakes on up until that fight, but he looks really good, looked really good in the grappling game. Islam, obviously, is just a terror, an absolute force, dominant. And down at the bottom, we see Bo Nickel, who was just incredibly hyped, much like Lamine Yamal over the last year. He was just very expensive. He's kind of cooled down a little bit. He's still pretty pricey, honestly. Shavkat just won what many people called a very boring fight. I did not think it was a boring fight against Ian Machado Gary. I thought it was a pretty good fight, very tactical fight. Obviously, not a lot happened necessarily, but you can see both of those guys are very talented grapplers. Khamzat just running through everybody at this point. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. So that's the UFC preview. The last thing that I want to do here is I'm going to just look at a few card charts, just some things that stand out and what I think about that. So starting with baseball, you got Ohtani. And this card, it's actually flat from this time last year. So he had a good season. He was obviously up quite a bit. He was actually at one point up 37%, kind of at the peak during the season. Ohtani right now, because he's flat from this time last year, very expensive, sort of consensus best player in baseball, and already many people are calling him one of the best of all time. So if you want to lock something up long term, now might be as good a time as ever to buy Shohei Ohtani. I talked about Corbin Carroll, whose cards just have been coming down. He's down 64%. This is on his Chrome Draft Pick Auto, so that's down massively, down to $332. Aaron Judge up 30% from this time last year. Obviously had a fantastic year. Because he's up so much, I'm still just like cautious. And now he won't have Soto hitting in the lineup. I know they're going to picking up other players and Cody Bellinger and blah, 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 but those guys aren't Soto. So we'll see what happens if he's got that like protection at the plate with Soto. But it's Judge. As long as he's healthy, I got to imagine he's going to be really good. Bobby Witt Jr. is very exciting. A lot of people saying that they would rather lock up Bobby Witt Jr. over a Juan Soto long term. He's up 25% over the last year, had a really good year, and Soto up 113% on his Bowman Chrome Refractor PSA 10 from this same time last year. Let me know what you think of Soto's cards going forward. Does it hurt his legacy and his card market that he started on the Nationals, and then he went to the Padres, and then he went for 1 year to the Yankees, and now he's taking the big payday to effectively cheat on the Yankees and go to the Mets for the big payday? Who could say they blame him, honestly, for that insane amount of money? But at the end of the day, money doesn't buy happiness. So let me know what you think about Soto's cards long-term in the comments. Football-wise, Lamar Jackson up 84%. He won the MVP last year. As of this moment, Josh Allen is the favorite, the Vegas odds-on favorite to win the MVP, in spite of the fact that Lamar Jackson's having arguably, or maybe not even arguably, but definitively the best season of his career statistically, like 34 passing touchdowns and 3 interceptions as of recording this. He's having a really good year. He might win MVP again. If not, he'll probably be runner-up. He's up 84%, but the Ravens' defense is worse than I ever remember seeing in my life. So that's a problem, and who knows if they can actually compete in the playoffs. Josh Allen's up 62%. Josh Allen's cards have always been expensive. They've always been expensive. People have always believed in him. That 2018 draft class, very loaded with he and Lamar and Saquon and others. You have Darnold, obviously, who's had the resurgence. You have Baker Mayfield. Very memorable draft class, but he just looks otherworldly. And my Detroit Lions, with their 16 injured defensive players, absolutely could not stop him. We had no hope of stopping him, and he just moved the ball at will, and we couldn't keep up. Mahomes up 46%. What a bizarre, this is the most bizarre thing in the world. Patrick Mahomes, for a stretch of about 4 years, had put up video game numbers. He was unbelievably good. He's winning MVPs. He's winning Super Bowls. He's winning Super Bowl MVPs. And he is having the worst season of his career. He just got injured. But people have continued to buy his cards. He saw a lot of hype and momentum going into during the summer, and it just sort of has continued. And you can see he's just up. He's come down a little bit he's come down a little bit. He was up 100%. So he's actually down from that peak this summer. So maybe we look at that, in that sense. But I guess they're just sort of saying he's the guy. Like, there's too much volatility in all the other players. Who do we put our money to in football? Well, Mahomes is the guy. It makes sense. He's already accomplished more than most players ever will in their career. But it's just been interesting. I guess it's a little bit of proof that statistical performance doesn't always correlate to card price movement. And then just a couple of guys. You got T-Law, you got Anthony Richardson. Like I said, just to illustrate, you just see that sharp drop-off after the season started, and they haven't been good. They've been injured. Really rough situation for both of them, and anybody holding their cards, just always be careful with football and with football quarterbacks. And last one, this is just that depressing chart. Look at Wemby. These cards were way too expensive. They were way too high. I can pop this open and show you. Wemby silver topped out over $3,000. That was absurd. That was incredibly absurd. Makes no sense, especially when you're looking at other players like Luka and Shea and Anthony Edwards and everybody else. But those have come crashing down to $683, and his Prism base is down 84%. So let me know. What do you think is going to happen with Wemby? What should you do? Should you sell? Are you buying more now, or are you just kind of in a holding pattern? You let me know down in the comments. That does it for this video. 2024, nearly in the books. I'm wishing all of you a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a happy soon-to-be New Year. I hope that this year brings you many good tidings, a lot of peace in the world, and many good things in the sports card market. Let me know your thoughts down below and who you like to go up the most next year. And soon, pretty soon, I'll be doing a preview of what I think might be happening in this coming year with the sports card market. Until next time, happy investing, keep on collecting, and make sure to have fun.